Welcome to Highland League Weekly, the podcast. I'm Ryan Cryle. I'm joined, as always, by Callum Law and Paul Third as we discuss all of the matches from the Breedon Highland League on Saturday. This is taken from our main Highland League Weekly show over on the Press and Journal website, which you can access by becoming a subscriber to the P&J. But if you just want to hear the chat about the games, we're going to start with our main game this week, which is also our main highlights game. Baxadee against Brora Rangers from Spain Park. Now this one ended 3-1 to the hosts. A show of strength from Baxadee. Are they out with the title fight at this stage?
No, you couldn't rule them out yet. You mentioned a show of strength. It ended up being that. It was a strange sort of game in a way, in that the first 20 minutes I thought Brora were really good. They were knocking the ball about, and I thought Shane Sutherland and Tony Dingwall in particular, their link-up play was really sharp, looked dangerous, scored, hit the woodwork. But then after that, Baxadee got their equaliser in the 20th minute and then really sort of got to grips with the game. They got closer to Brora, they made it more difficult, and it was much more of a sort of even contest. And then Liam Jewell at the top end of the pitch, they had a sort of a willing runner all the time, and somebody that kept the Brora defence honest. And well, as we saw with the third goal, was able to, or as some people will have seen rather, with the third goal, he was able to sort of capitalise on a mistake from the Brora backline. And in the end, Baxadee, they got that second, got that third, and then after that, other than the one moment where Shane Sutherland hits the post, they defended really well, limited Brora's opportunities after that, and ran out with a good 3 points. And I mean, they're 7 points behind Brora, having played a game more, so there is still, a fair margin there, but, and more than 20 games still to be played. I think we'll come on later to more of the sort of top end of the table title race as well, but there'll be a lot of twists and turns yet. But certainly you look at Baxadee now, and they're more like what they would expect to be at 7 games unbeaten now in the league, and after a sort of slow start, I think they are sort of building some decent momentum now.
They're building some decent momentum, but Steve Mackay, the Brora manager's quotes after the game are quite interesting. I initially saw them written down. Sometimes, as we know, that can make things, come across a bit stronger than maybe it is when you see it being said on video or whatever. But Stephen said the most frustrating thing for him was that Baxadee are a shadow of the team they were last season, and they were there for the taking. Do you agree that Baxadee are a shadow of the team they were last season?
Not quite, no. I think they're slightly different in terms of what the team they were last season, partly due to maybe players that they don't have, and like Michael Phillipson being injured and things. I think, alters how they are as a team. I think maybe if he was reflecting on it, Stephen maybe wouldn't have used that exact phrase, but I think in the heat of the moment afterwards, that was what he said. I mean, that's everyone's entitled to their opinion, that's fair enough, but I wouldn't necessarily go along with that. What I would say, I can understand him feeling that the game was there for the taking, though, because if you looked at the way they played in the first 20 minutes, I was sitting there after a quarter of an hour thinking, Brora could potentially run away with it. They were doing well, but Baxadee, to their credit, sort of stopped them from doing that. But I can understand his point with that, and I can also understand why he's saying that as well, for him looking at his own team defensively, because, he was complaining about the first goal as well, but the second goal's a set piece that isn't dealt with, and the third one, Colin Williamson knows himself, he just, it's a mistake you can't make there. So I can understand that part of it, but I wouldn't have said Baxadee are a shadow of the team they were last season, no.
Okay, we must move on then to the other games that took place in the weekend, because there's quite a lot to discuss going through the games over the weekend. We'll start with Brechin City 6, Forest Mechanics 2. Mitch Taylor and Finlay Allen had Brechin 2-0 up. Callum Frame, who else, pulled one back after half-time. Grady McGrath, who else, netted for Brechin, only for Frame to score again from 25 yards. So, it's good for our golden boot race content, this game. However, City in the 58th minute, Allen notched his second goal of the afternoon. Closed down McCarthy, slotted the ball in the net. Keaton Sweeney then made it 5-2 from close range in 73 minutes before Killian Sheridan lobbed the keeper to complete the scoring. And, Brechin in the end, comfortable winners. Don't think Steve McDonald was particularly happy with the goals they conceded for us.
That could be the understatement of this season. I'm sorry, I'm chuckling because I've watched the highlights, and all 8 goals are atrocious defensively for both teams.
Even the 25-yarder.
All 8 goals are atrocious.
Build-up was the
It is a great finish from Callum Frame for his second of the game, but I think the ball runs through a Brechin defender's legs before it opens up for him to have sight of goal. But honestly, it's horrific. It's utterly horrendous. It's Keystone Cops, comedy capers, you've been framed, name whatever you like. It's terrible, dire. I'm sure both managers this week will be going, right lads, we need to be working on our defending because it was so bad.
Because I think in general play, Steve McDonald, there was a lot of things he was like reasonably happy with and thought, we've played no bad there, but it's like when you make the individual errors, it ends up 6-2 and people think that's a doing, but it's just
from a goalkeeper kicking a clearance off an opposing player to a guy taking a fresh hair swipe or 3 ricochets in a penalty area, did the ball fall? You get them all. Anything you can think of happens in this game.
Good.
Poor pass backs, everything.
Looking forward to people will be seeking those highlights out.
The paying punter certainly got value for money, I would say.
Okay, in contrast, Buckie Thistle, Huntly 0. First line of our report on this was Buckie Thistle and Huntly shared the points in an uninspiring goalless draw at Victoria Park. What do we want to say about this one?
Uninspiring. Yeah, the talking point for this is Darren Conway appearing as a trialist at the age of 40 for Buckie Thistle.
11 years after he
retiring. 29, he left Buckie due to work commitments. I think he's been at Lochee Harp, most recently playing and coaching, but he's popped up out of nowhere and hit the post as well. So it'll be interesting to see if he's going to become a signing for Buckie. But yeah, 0-0. What can we say? Both teams will be disappointed not to win. And they face each other again in the Scottish Cup on Saturday. So as a dress rehearsal goes, here's hoping they've got the jitters out the way and we get a better game at Christie Park this weekend.
Yeah. Clacknacuddon 7, Rothes 0. Now, after this one, Clacknacuddon manager Connor Gethin said he believes Troy Cooper, who got all 7, no he didn't, he got 2 goals in this one. James Anderson got a hat-trick, which was good for my prediction for the top scorer this season. Struan Colley and Alan McPhee getting the other goals. Probably what we would have expected to happen in this game. We would have expected Clack to win, but they've won handsomely.
You never finished your Troy Cooper point, which was...
Oh, did I not finish? No, you did. Sorry. He said that Troy Cooper could be in the running for Breedon Highland League Player of the Year, which I felt, when you see James Anderson actually scoring 3 in the game, obviously you've got assists in that fact.
I'm a fan of Troy Cooper. Every time I watch him, I think he looks good.
Do you agree? Is Troy Cooper in the mix?
Well, right now, I think on current form, if you were doing it just now, he would have to be. Obviously over the season, you'll see what happens. But I think Troy Cooper on his day is certainly one of the most talented players in the division. You're on about James Anderson. Both him and Troy Cooper have got 10 goals. So Troy's weighed in with his share of goals and assists, and he's just. If you look at him over probably just about the last year, it's pretty remarkable, really, his sort of rise. Because a year ago, he was barely getting a kick of the ball because Clach still had Connor Bunce, who played in that wide left position. But then the deal last November for Connor Bunce to go to Brora, Andy McRae to go to Clach, and Andy McRae obviously plays in a central area, so Troy Cooper sort of played wide left ever since, and rest is history. He was flying second half of last season, and he started this season in the same vein. I do also think there's a wee bit of sort of cleverness from his manager in terms of Player of the Year and these things. It's players everywhere around the league that vote for it, so by dropping that in early, it maybe just plants a seed in people's minds as well. So he's no daft, Connor Gethin. So it's probably the earliest shout we've had for a Player of the Year, 3rd week in September, but fair play to him. Aside from that, in terms of the game, it was just impressive and ruthless stuff from Clach, really. And for Rothes, although people maybe look and go, the roof fell in the second half, what went wrong in the second half? At 0-0 in the first half, Clach did hit the woodwork 3 times as well. It was a very dominant display for the Lily Whites, and concerning again for Rothes, just in terms of they're too easy to play against, too easy to score against, and they're not giving themselves enough of a chance in enough games because of that. And I mean, you just last year in Clach, you look at them, it's like one, okay, they've had a few draws, which you maybe be unhappy with, but in all competitions this season, it's one defeat in 14 games, which, it's great stuff. And at home, it's 7 games, 5 wins, 2 draws, and they've only conceded 2 goals. So, you can't really argue with those stats if you're a Clach fan.
Best defence in the league.
Yeah, and without Josh Meekins and Andy McRae and these players being able
Greg,
to play.
well, that's
Yeah.
the thing. Greg Morrison, Josh Meekins, Andy McRae, Roddy McLeod, Copeland Thane, they're all to come back in still.
Yep. Devonvale won for Formartine United 3. I chuckle, which probably gives you an inkling of what's about to come next. Formartine United actually went level on points with Brora at the top of the table, coming from behind in this one. Jamie McLennan scored in the first half for Vale, another goal for him. Second half, Hamish Ritchie, Ronan McAllister and Brodie Alberts all scored for United. But in the second period, Graham Rodger was sent off for Formartine. Gary Wood, player manager, Devonvale, was sent off. Rhys Thomas of Formartine United was shown a red card, and Martin Skinner, the Formartine United assistant manager, was also shown a red card. Can you just unpick what happened for us, Callum?
Well, I think
Mayhem.
Towsy might be the word, but I know there was a wee. I think it sort of built up. I mean, Graham Rodgers' red card was for 2 bookings. I know that Gary Wood was unhappy, felt that I think Rory McAllister had quite a strong challenge supposedly on Gary, which he thought could have been a red card, but was only a yellow. Then Gary later on has gone thundering into Matthew McLean, straight red for that for Scott Donohoe. A bit of a sort of scuffle ensues, and Rhys Thomas I think he got a second booking for his part in that. And then I'd imagine Martin Skinner, probably complaining about that, has then received his red card. So it was all happening. And again, if you've paid to go to that game, you like a bit of well, maybe you didn't, but I think most folk can go, you like a bit of argy-bargy, and there'll be a few
Violence.
No violence, but a few shit, and nobody was hurt, a few bit of scuffle and excitement, and you certainly got that. But aside for that, in terms of the game, very good result for Formartine, because Devonvale this season have been strong at home, and they got themselves in front through Jamie McClellan, and then I think in the second half as well they had their wind at the back, so you might have thought it might have been a struggle for Formartine, but again, just maybe that extra touch of quality with the signings they've made in the summer, can Hamish Ritchie and Rory McAllister getting the first 2 goals to get them ahead. And it's like, games like that where maybe last season Formartine might have dropped points, but they just had that guys who, when you need them, they'll step up and produce something. And then good for young Brodie Alberts as well at the end. And after all the stoppages in 90 plus 7, he was able to get on the score sheet as well. And, I think if you'd said to Stuart Anderson before that game you'd come from behind to win 3-1, he'd have been delighted, and that's what's happened. And, they're in a very good place at the top end of the table.
Another team that are in a very good place at the top end of the table, but perhaps slightly flying under the radar for me anyway. Fraserburgh won 4-1 at home to Strathspey Thistle. On Saturday, 20-minute flurry of goals in the first half, 2 from Sean Butcher, including what I'm led to believe was an exquisite chip for a second. Scott Barber and Lewis Duncan scoring the other goals. Dylan Lawrence netting a late consolation for Strathspey. 30 are the Broch quietly going about their business?
It won't be quietly much longer if they keep racking up the sort of goals and results that they're getting. To be fair, Sean Butcher's probably the goal of the weekend. To call it a chip isn't doing it justice, because there's a lot of power and a lot of dip behind it. He gets it up and over the goalkeeper and down, just a swivel and hit out of nowhere. It's a great finish.
Reminiscent of the goal that he scored in that last day.
You do have to counter it a wee bit by saying I think some of the defender from Ryan Essendon's side, contributed to their own downfall. It was a much improved second half from Strathspey at Belsley, but the game's gone at 4-0 down at half time. For Fraserburgh, I mean, they're up there, a point off the top. I think they go to Brechin next in the league. They've obviously got Brora in the Scottish Cup at the weekend, so it's a tasty couple of fixtures coming up for Mark Cowie's side.
See, when you look at it, looks like in its early days, but when you look at that top of the table, Brora 27 points for 11 games and the best goal difference for Martin, 27 for 12 games, Brechin 26 from 11, Fraserburgh 26 from 12, and Clach 25 points for 12. It's mouth-watering stuff. Like, it's like
the good old days.
It's set up, even at this stage, it's set up really well, and there's a lot of kind of excitement there, and hopefully I mean, other teams might end up getting involved as well, but hopefully it's close for now till the end of the season, and it makes for a really exciting title race once again.
We've had a 3-way final day. This is the season we
Well,
need more.
no one's been infallible so far, which is a good sign in terms of getting an exciting finish. Inverurie Locos won, Keith 0. Only goal came on 15 minutes. Jack McKenzie impeded in the box as a cross came in. Paul Coots, Paul Coots scored the penalty, but Paul Coots was later then sent off for 2 yellows. But that goal was the difference. Craig Ewan, the Keith manager, said that he felt Locos had played their get out of jail free card, I think it was, and it was quite a cheap penalty. Have you seen it?
I think it's a penalty.
Yeah?
I think it's a penalty, yeah. And
clumsy is probably the word.
But to be fair, I also think there's no debating it's a red card for Paul Coots either. It's a silly challenge to make. I think he kind of catches the Keith player who is about 15 yards inside his own half from a break from I think it's a Locos corner, and he just catches him in the back of the heel and the second yellow. It was daft. Keith will be frustrated to play against 10 men and not come back and get something out of the game, but Locos, they're slowly getting into a bit of rhythm here, I think, and they're starting to move up the table.
I think what's more frustrating for Keith is the hit post and the crossbar. I mean, the one that came off the bar was Taylor Chapman onto his own bar, which I didn't think he really knew a lot about. But Liam Duncan, I will feel he should have scored in the first half at 1-1 when he hit 1-0. When he hit the post, because he'd sort of got himself into the perfect position and done the hard work, and he'd beat Zach Ellis, but it was just onto the post rather than in the net. And it's like, that's, Craig Ewan was saying it before the game, and it remains a problem. It's just that firepower or that final bit putting the ball in the net, which is hampering Keith at the moment, and that proved to be the case again.
Nairn County 3, Turriff United 0. Penultimate game to discuss from the weekend. Ben Kelly and Fraser Dingwall with goals inside the first 10 minutes, and then Paul Brindle not scoring the third until late on. What happened in the middle?
Well, it's funny because Wayne McIntosh after the game, he was sort of like, we've won 3-0, it's 4 wins in the bounce, great. But he was like, second half performance especially, he was really disappointed. But I think he was disappointed they're 2-0 up inside 10 minutes. Inside 10 minutes. And I think he felt they sort of had chances and they can really go on, kill the game off and make it a comfortable afternoon. But he said at 2-0, sort of always on edge and sort of having to defend and things like that before they eventually got the third. And I think Wayne just felt there was a wee bit of given the run they'd been on, and then it's like, we're 2-0 up early on. I think he sort of felt there was a wee bit of complacency crept in for Nairn that he was keen to sort of stamp out. And he did make a valid point that that was in the first half actually at 2-0, that Timmy Fatona went through sort of one-on-one and Lewis Monroe's made a good save, and Wayne's sort of point with everything he was saying was like, well, it's like, if that goes in, it's like on another day, he goes, with the way we play in the second half, he goes, it could sort of have gone pear-shaped. So that's why he was sort of kind of urging the need to be ruthless and make sure you sort of do your job and kill the game off. But here, that's by the by. At the end of the day, they've won well in the end, 3-0, and I mean, you look at it, they've already equalled the 1-5 home league games last season, for the whole of last season. We're in the third week of September and they've already equalled that. They've had 5 wins, a draw and a loss in 7 league games. Station Park has proven to be a really tough place to go, which will please the Nairn faithful no end. And on the flip side for Turriff, I just think it's like they've given themselves a mountain to climb with the way they started the game. And I think Warren Cummins would admit they never really fully got in, even though they had maybe spells at 2-0, they never really got fully into their stride. And I think you look at sort of Turriff's results and it's like win-loss, maybe a draw thrown in there. It's a bit sort of up and down, and I don't think you're maybe quite sure what you'll get all of the time for Turriff, but clearly, as we've seen on their day, they're a capable team as well.
One more game. Wick Academy 0, Lossiemouth 1. The only goal in this one arrived on 72 minutes when Ryan Matheson's free kick from the left broke Tristan Stephen, and the on-loan Aberdeen attacker cracked a volley into the net. This feels like a really important win for Lossiemouth.
It's a great win for Lossie. I mean, it's the first win they'd had in 10 games, going back to when they beat Banks second game of the season. and it's also the first time they'd won at Harmsworth Park since the 13th of August 2016. It was just interesting. I looked up before we came on air their goal scorers that day. It was Connor Macaulay, who started on Saturday, and the other one was an Alan Facher own goal, and he's obviously now the WIC chairman, so it's funny how they're both still involved in some way. But like, I think for Loss and Steve Porter was saying afterwards, like, the last few weeks has been hard, and I think he's found it hard when they've been on the wrong end of results, and he says you sort of start questioning, Ken, is it something I'm doing, or what more can we do? And he goes, you're looking at everything, and he goes, the players are still working hard, but he goes, there's no reward, but like, that's a reward for them on Saturday, and a good finish actually for Tristan Stephen as well, Aberdeen loanee, his first goal for Lossy as well, and they'll hope he can produce a few more. And, you know, a great 3 points for them up at Harmsworth Park. But for Wick, I think Gary Manson was bitterly disappointed with the chances they had, particularly in the first half, but they didn't take them. They were sort of foiled by Stuart Knight. And I think it's that thing of, like, if you didn't convert when you're on top, you always leave yourself vulnerable, and that's what happened, and they got stung off a set piece. And I think as well for Wick, now that they still had capable players in the park, but you look at like the middle to front, they were missing Mark McGregor, Kyle Henderson, Gordon McNabb, Davy Allen, Jack Henry, and, you know, on another day, even if 2 or 3 of them are in the team, do they maybe tuck away one of their chances, and then it's a different story perhaps. But, you know, when you're missing those players, it's tough, and Academy didn't take their chances ultimately.
Okay, for those watching this, let's have a look at the latest Breedon Highland League standings. That's it then for this episode of the Highland League Weekly podcast from the Press and Journal. Thanks to Callum and Paul for joining me today. Just a reminder that if you want to watch highlights of this week's featured game between Bankstea and Brora Rangers from Spain Park, you can do so over on our main Highland League Weekly web show on the Press and Journal website. You need to be a subscriber to do that, but that's there for you to watch. You'll hear from us next in 2 weeks' time. It's a Scottish Cup weekend this weekend, so there'll be no Highland League Weekly next week. In the meantime, keep up to date with everything from us, though, on Twitter, or X as it's now known, or via our Facebook page, which is handily titled Highland League Weekly. But until you hear from us next, or see us next, please enjoy the football, whichever games you're watching.